Hi, I'm Denise Buell and I'm based in the religion department here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about leading effective class discussions, which is a really big topic, but let me touch on some highlights. Whether you teach small classes, medium-sized classes, or large ones, and mostly I teach on the smaller end between courses between 15 and 25 students. But regardless of the size, you have the opportunity to really engage students in discussion, even in lecture courses. But I will focus my comments mostly on these kind of mid-sized classes. So we all want our students to be engaged, and one of the most delightful ways to do that is to hear what they have to say in class. And I think the temptation, because we all love to talk and we want to communicate our understanding of the material and to make sure that we're covering what we think we should cover, there's a temptation for us to conduct a kind of tennis match, Socratic classroom style with our students, where all of the discussion gets filtered through us. And I've found that while that can be personally satisfying, where I am responding to individual students and trying to redirect conversation, that when I have pushed myself to try to create the conditions where students talk to one another more directly and less just to me, that the level of class discussion, the quality of participation, and the breadth of participation increases dramatically. So I just want to say a few words about how some of the strategies I've used to accomplish this kind of student-to-student participation. And one of the key steps, might be obvious, is to think about what we ask students to do before we even get to class. Because the kinds of prompts and preparation that happen before we come into the classroom are going to make a huge difference, both in terms of the kinds of questions we are prepared to send out into the room and the kinds of study questions or writing prompts we might give to students before they come to class. Sometimes I found it effective to assign one or two people what I would call position papers. So they would be asked to write not just a reflection paper, but an argument, take a stand on something in the course reading materials. And everyone in class would know that those one or two people would have something to say, whether it's pre-circulated or not. And they can be the folks who initiate discussion and to whom other students then respond, instead of just having the spotlight on me. I need to know if, especially, the position papers go in a direction that I haven't anticipated. I also need to have thought of a battery of possible questions or redirects to kind of make sure that we also include topics or issues that might not come up in the student-initiated part of the discussion. Another very concrete strategy would be to begin a class with a focus on a particular passage from the assigned readings, or a controversy if, say, one or two readings are in conflict or tension with one another or with the previous class session, and get everybody's attention on something very focused and allow that to generate the seeds of discussion. And I often then set the ground rules for discussion to be what is often called a discussion chain, where I might begin with a question myself, ask a student to respond, but then have the student recognize the next speaker. So, and that needs to be another student, not me, so that the discussion proceeds from student to student with students recognizing the next speaker instead of my being the moderator or facilitator. And then eventually I'll need to intervene to either summarize where we've been, or if we've gone way off on a tangent, to bring it back in. But often after a few sessions of practicing this, if they haven't had experience in other classes discussing in this way, it becomes much more like the kinds of conversations that you would have with friends or colleagues than simply a drilling session or a traditional Socratic classroom. So I find that works quite effectively. So one of the struggles that many people have is thinking about how to make sure you don't simply have those who are already comfortable speaking speak all the time in a class. And this is admittedly a struggle. One of the strategies that I found is effective for increasing the breadth of student participation, in addition to what I've already said, is to literally change up the use of class time. So you might have 20 minutes of discussion that's organized around a position paper or a set of questions, a passage, what have you. And then you might actually impose a pretty obvious break, either by summarizing what's happened so far and then switch to a different strategy. One that is very good for quieter students is a fishbowl, where you ask 3 or 4 students to physically come into the center of the classroom or the front of the classroom and begin discussing another topic, either one based on a study question they received outside of class or something you've just introduced in class. And all those students are responsible for the discussion. Everyone else serves as the audience, and other members of the class can replace the students who are up front in the fishbowl only after those students have themselves made a contribution to the discussion. And students tend to think it's weird at first, but also it's quite fun. It gets people physically moving, and everyone is interested in what's happening in the conversation. They know that at some point they're going to have to come up, so they're paying attention to what's being discussed, and it allows people to have a little bit of time to think about where they would like to enter the conversation. Another tried and true mechanism for quieter students is to have in-class writing, immediate task where you pose a question or have people respond to a quotation or an issue, and everyone gets a couple of minutes to write. Everyone has had something to say, so you can call on a quieter student to initiate the discussion, knowing that they actually have something in front of them. And this works especially well if you've already had written assignments from a number of quieter students and you know they have a lot to say, but they haven't been speaking up in class. And this can help you can deliberately use these kinds of strategies to balance out gender, ethnic, racial disparities in terms of participation in the classroom. So those are just a few ideas about discussion strategies, and I would be happy to talk with anybody in person further.